1. 3, 2, 1, and go. We are live. Happy belated Easter to you and your family as you are living in isolation times. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You could, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. Like the Hockey Podcast on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at KVULE. And we'll get to the other, or everyone here in a moment. We welcome Heidi and Sean. Hello, how are you in Calgary with hats on back?
We're doing all right. It's supposed to be stay out, so we went out for a walk and enjoyed the nice.
Nice. Yes.
We had to match. Okay, he had his hat on, so I was like, "Well, fine, I'll put mine on backwards."
Fair. That's what people do, and I can respect that. So, yes. And Tyler, how are things out in Paris?
It's finally starting to feel like summer around Kevin. Seeing more and more people out and about. Social distancing observations are kind of mixed, I have to say, but people are trying to make the most out of the outdoorsing opportunities that still exist around here.
There we go. Yes, it's I kind of feel it. They're probably everywhere we go. There have like the report cards and social distancing are going to be mixed, but you're looking at Facebook Live here. You're seeing a white screen. I'm going to try to fix that as we're going through this here. I
just wanted to add, Kevin, I put a hat on today because otherwise I'd be the only person without a hat on here, and I didn't want to feel excluded. Plus, we got the Calgary red just dominating the upper right corner of my screen there with Devin.
There, yes.
Yeah, meanwhile, me and Sean are wearing, actually, we're both wearing hats from the same brewing company.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
So we're not even wearing hockey hats.
And then, funny enough, Devin and I both are wearing the same brand, just two different teams.
Yes, there we go. Chris is wearing his Van hat, and Devin is wearing his Cal hat. Devin, how are you doing?
Oh, doing great. It's it's a beautiful day here in Calgary, and took the dog out this morning to the park, and I ripped around for a bit and doing well.
Cool. And Chris, you are becoming a viral sensation.
Definitely wasn't intended. Just was planning on helping some people out with a easy, convenient way of putting on a duvet cover. But yeah, apparently it's caught some traction.
There we go. Yes, we'll talk about household chores in a little bit later on. If you have any questions on Facebook Live, you can ask them there. I'm still working as we're doing this on the share screen, so if you're seeing a white screen, bear with me as I'm doing this as well. But I wanted to start this conversation, and if you're listening live on Spreaker, we thank you as well. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. I wanted to start this conversation on talking about the power of sport. It's been a couple of weeks since we gathered together. We're going through the replay hockey era now, which I feel, am I off in saying that the luster of the replay games are starting to lose its luster in some way, shape, or form? I don't feel that same excitement that we saw on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I think part of it is that all like the really interesting games that you want to rewatch have already been played, and now we're going with like middle of the season barn burner games that were fun and all. Like we got to last night the Canucks versus Avalanche from the previous season was on, and we got to relive that amazing bank pass from Petey to Besser. But it's just it's just more apathy now because we've seen all like the really fun like replays, but we haven't seen anything new to whet our appetite on that.
Well, anything exciting that we haven't seen yet, it seems like they're saving it for now. Example, recent Stanley Cup finals involving Canadian teams. I mean, it would be great to see. I'm not just advocating for 2011, but it'd be great to see 2004 again. It'd be great to see 2006 again, so I don't think we're quite there yet. I know Sportsnet's going heavy on baseball right now, but yeah, that TSN bringing out some of their old stuff has been interesting, but it's been a month here, and for sure there's a lot of the exciting, cool stuff has been shown already.
Well, I mean, I guess the Stanley Cup ones are probably going to wait till June if they're anticipating that this is going to go on that long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did show the last time the Leafs won a cup. They showed 1967 last night.
Yes. No, it actually. I do have to admit, the Leafs' undefeated streak in classic games ended last night when they showed the Carolina Hurricanes defeating the Toronto Maple Leafs in the infamous goalie game. There, Devin.
It was a matter of time.
I imagine Dangle's blood pressure went up again last night.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's the whole watching older games. It's gotten to a point where I'm not even watching them anymore because it just makes me upset. And it doesn't like Sean said, it didn't really fill my appetite. And I don't know. I'm just waiting for, hoping and waiting for something to pop up here soon with some news.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe where I want to go to start is kind of just asking before we get into news, because there was some that came out. What does playing sports and watching sports, how does that motivate you going, or how does that impact you? Like, what, I kind of want to get into the idea of the power of sport. And the reason I want to do that is I feel that there's a bit of a debate now on whether sports should even be played. And I understand some side of it, but I also think that there's a psychology behind it that I wanted to get into. And maybe I'll start with Heidi on this. What does playing or watching sports mean for you?
So for me, like, I know right now I've just been struggling because I feel like I'm kind of like getting bored, and I was like, well, what were my hobbies? And I was like, well, one of my biggest hobbies was watching the Flames and watching hockey and spending time with my friends watching hockey and stuff like that. So like that like immediate impact is definitely being felt, but yeah, just giving something to kind of like that community sense. Like obviously it's nice that we still have this podcast and stuff that can still run. Like you can still talk to Flames fans and your fellow fans about different things, but that's kind of like where it kind of means to me is having the more the sense of community and stuff. So that means a lot to me. So like it misses having the actual entertainment part of it, and that kind of sucks because that's like I would want to say like is your how would I say this, like the immediate gratification from it, from I'm just going to say hockey in general, but even like we would be like ramping up here in the next couple of months for like CFL and stuff too. Like looking forward to like watching the Stampeders because it's a team that both me and Sean actually cheer for the same team for. So looking kind of forward to that.
United in coupling as opposed to yeah.
And just in terms of playing sports, I haven't played sports for a few years. I used to play touch football in a league here in Calgary for a few years. And it was great. And I do actually miss doing that. And I would love to get back into that because that was also something that drove me to like exercise more and like kept my stress levels and stuff down a little bit. And I am missing that, particularly just being so homebound and it just being, the end of winter and all that stuff.
Sean?
Yeah. The community, the friends, shooting the shit, giving each other the gears. Like, I think anyone who knows me knows that that's a big part of all my friendships. Right, Chris?
John? Never.
But like, yeah, it's community going out. Like, despite like when I played hockey, when I sailed, and golf, it wasn't necessarily like the sport was almost secondary to me at that point. Yes, it gave me, as Heidi said, it gives you a reason to exercise, a reason to get out and get into shape and push yourself to be better physically, mentally. It helps you mentally, but for me, a lot of it was the social aspect. After the game competition, just sitting down and shooting the shit, replaying things. Oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better, and all that. Like, it's just you don't have that. And then like watching sports, the two words that come to mind are a investment. When your favorite team is on, you're watching your favorite team, and you've got that emotional investment. Nothing else matters. How crappy your job is doesn't matter. How frustrating of a week happened doesn't really matter. You're so focused on cheering on your team, watching how it's happening, what's happening in the game, and how they're doing in the league, and getting so emotionally invested and doing things just as an escape. We don't have that now. And I think there's a lot of people who are struggling with it because they don't have that escape, that outlet to debate and talk and just immerse themselves in sport, whether it's playing or watching.
For those that are watching on Facebook Live, I did have to restart the video because we're having a technical issue. So first seeing white green. I do apologize. We will continue with this. I don't want to start and restart again, but I'm trying to fix this on my end here. It doesn't look like so. I apologize, no picture, but everyone looks wonderful and beautiful online and on Spreaker. If you do any questions, then comment. Feel free. What we're talking about is the power of sport and the psychology of how it helps. Tyler, to referee, you must look at this in a very different, not in a similar, but it also brings a unique experience as well.
Well, I picking up on what Sean was saying about referee a game. It is a form of an escape as well. The real life is not a factor anymore. It's just the hockey game, and it requires tremendous focus to do at a high level. And it might seem odd for referee to say that a rink with people criticizing you constantly is your happy place, but it kind of is. You really do sort of get that departure from the realities and the difficulties of normal life. And I think that's why there's a strong appetite right now for a lot of people to get some kind of live sports back on TV, even if there's no fans. At least it's something for people right now in a difficult time to get an escape. And I think that's what's big about watching sports for me and officiating sports. Officiating and playing sports, there's both the camaraderie part of it and the social aspect too. My social life mostly revolves around the people I play and referee sports with. So this time of year, for me, it's in between the hockey season and the softball season and the golf season. So it's so this is kind of a time where I'm a little bit more at home and watching sports on TV. But then again, this would have been the first round of the playoffs. I mean, this would have been like, you get home off work and you've got 4 games to watch, and you just, you got your buddies over, and and if your team happens to be in it, it's just a whole other experience. And this year, for all of us, it looked like our teams would be in the postseason. So it was, what a missed opportunity that was. So yeah, it's been a challenge to fill that void, and I don't know. I feel like in some ways it hasn't been very good. Probably drinking a little more than I should, probably eating a little more than I should. But hopefully this ends soon. We get some sports back to sink our teeth into.
Chris, what about for you?
Like it's hard to kind of add any more points because I feel like everything that I would have wanted to say has already been said, and I know that's kind of a broken record thing for me at this point. But just generally speaking, like the community aspect of it, actually, like what Tyler's talking about, so like this would be when playoffs are starting. So like just that general excitement of playoff hockey, like I'm at this point, it almost feels like the dog days of summer, except without the excitement of the draft and free agent, all that sort of stuff. Just no sports.
Evan?
Yeah, I'll talk more about the playing aspect of the sport. You know, it's for the younger generation and growing up. You know, you learn a lot of lessons throughout it all. How to win, how to lose, how to have some resilience, push back within your personality, and being humble, and working as a team. I think those are life qualities that sport has really shown me, and I know it's shown a lot of people, and that's a massive learning curve and massive outlet for me when I grew up, and the lifelong friends that I have through sport, through hockey, through field hockey, through golf. It's been the relationship of sport and myself is goes very, very deep, and it was my first love and still is my first love. But it's not having it, not watching it. It almost hurts more because of what sport means to me. Having that outlet, and are able to relax with your friends, have a beer, have that sense of community. It's it does suck, but looking at it on a positive side is that it's not going to be gone forever. We'll get it back soon, and definitely don't want to take it for granted when it does come back, because it does mean a lot to a lot of people, and it brings a lot of people together.
Yeah, and I also think for me, the other thing that is, and I loved what I asked this question on Twitter, and Larry Leach's answer was really good, is the most fulfilling victories come from the most devastating losses and struggles. And I think where sport has an opportunity here is in this pandemic, where it is a very trying time, is an opportunity to show some inspiration and give people a hope. And I was thinking about Jesse Owens as an example back in, well, before we were all born, but World War II, the Jesse Owens and what he did. And even you look back at 9/11 and how the New York Yankees were able to kind of bring New York together during that time. The Humboldt Broncos recently. All of those kind of things, I think, do bring something together, and it's, which leads to Donald Trump. And I'm not here to say that I'm a Donald Trump supporter, and I'm not here to say that, that's not what I'm saying. But Donald Trump did have an opportunity to meet with the commissioners of all of the pro sports, including wrestling, including UFC, so that included Dana White and Vince McMahon. And Dr. Anthony Fauci, the doctor that's looking after everything in the United States, was asked this week about the possibility of sports being played, and this is what he had to say as soon as I hit play here.
There's a way of doing that. Nobody comes to the stadium. Put them in big hotels, wherever you want to play. Keep them very well surveilled, and namely a surveillance, but have them tested like every week, and make sure they don't wind up infecting each other or their family, and just let them play the season out. I mean, people say, well, you can't play without spectators. Well, I think you probably get enough buy-in from people who are dying to see a baseball game, particularly me. I'm living in Washington. We have the world champion Washington Nationals. I want to see them play again.
Yeah, so kind of talking a little bit about, thinking about that a bit. We'll start with Chris and then go around, because I feel like sometimes Chris gets, because other people jump in, that's why Chris doesn't get all the points that he gets to say out, is because he's not the first to speak. So I want Chris to be the first to speak. Hearing that, and we're already just talking about a little bit here about how we're hoping everything comes back. Hearing Dr. Fauci's words, does that give you, where are you at now in terms of seeing pro sports? Gary Bettman talked about the NHL possibly coming back. The earliest would probably be around mid-July. Where are you at? How are you feeling with that? Are you okay with this idea of playing in open without fans in the stands?
So my general feeling about it is that I don't expect sports to come back until the fall. I just honestly don't see any major sporting events in the summer happening at this point, just because of, like, yes, they want to reopen the economy and all that jazz to kind of kickstart everything back up again. But because of the social distancing rules and what the health people are saying in response to what the politicians are suggesting, I just don't see it happening until the fall. And that being said, that would mean that all the current seasons would essentially just be canceled with no, like, awards or trophies given out. And they would just have to start fresh next season. As shitty as that is to say that that's probably what will happen, I just don't see it playing out any other way. Like, yeah, you could have no fans in there and that sort of thing. I just don't see that being a realistic viability, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, there can be a lot of risk involved with it. You're going to have some players with some pushback that might not even want to play because of the risk factors behind it all. It's not even just the league itself, but the NHLPA has said it as well, right? So it's I'm kind of with Chris on that. I think that they won't come back until very late, or I guess late August, early September. But part of me still thinks that, they want to hand out the Stanley Cup. So, potentially it will push into next season. That's my prediction.
I agree with you, Dev. There's too much money on the table. Especially with the capped leagues that have caps based off of revenue, year to year it changes based off of the previous year's revenue. And the way, from what I was hearing, I believe it was reported by Pierre Lebrun, is that despite the NHL being a gate-driven league, between like national broadcasts and their sponsors, if they can get some sort of close to normal playoff system and finish off the season that way, that's an extra $400 to $500 million in revenue. And their sponsors. So if they can get some sort of, if that's the case, then that's why I agree with Devin. I think they're going to do what they can to finish off the season, because that's a huge amount of money that can go towards making sure that the cap doesn't go down significantly, or maybe even still can go up a bit, and the players aren't going to be paying a crap ton into escrow, because that's one of their biggest issues right now, and at least with the NHL. So if they can find a way to do that, whether it is in middle of nowhere with 2 or 3 different rinks, because you're going to need multiple rinks to make this feasible. That's the one thing I think not a lot of people are talking about, is that if they do it this way, I don't think they can finish off the regular season. They're going to have to jump right into some sort of playoff format. Because if you look at like a regular day of hockey, how many games are there? There's at least 3 or 4.
Yeah, at minimum, or at most there could be 15.
Yeah. So then if you switch to a playoffs, there's usually 3 or 4. There's 3 or 4 max.
Sometimes 5 in the first round, just with building availability on, but that's about it. I don't think there's ever been a 6-game day in the playoffs. I don't think I've ever seen that.
No, but that's where I'm at. I think, but it also comes down to whether or not a vaccine can be produced here soon, whether or not there's an area that can quote unquote open up and allow them to allow a league to step in there and import people into their area, because that's not just that's the other thing, is like there's players who are in Sweden right now who, I don't know if anyone's been following that, they have nothing going on in terms of social distancing rules or shutting down like businesses and stuff to try and mitigate this. They're full on open, and they're getting infected at an exponential rate. So,
and I mean, every week we hear about another player or two that has tested positive.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I suppose, just to pick up on what Sean's saying, I mean, I suppose you could test every single player before they're, eligible to participate in whatever ends up being done. But yeah, like, you're going to need multiple buildings for sure. If you're doing things centralized, you could probably compress the schedule because you wouldn't need as much time between games, specifically for travel. So, but still, yeah. What about all the, the league staff, the team staff, broadcasters? There's still a lot more people involved in making this happen, even when there's no fans involved.
Well, I think what I was hearing was that, but they would have bare minimum in those arenas or whatever in terms of people working it. And then the broadcasters wouldn't go there. They would broadcast via TV.
They call off monitors and yeah.
Well,
boy,
I wouldn't like. I know the WWE, like, as an example, the WWE does their, like, watch through a monitor their play-by-play, but it's not the most ideal. And it's the other part of this that I think makes it really difficult here is, maybe it's just me, but I'm not excited about the Calgary Flames or the Vancouver Canucks, for that matter, playing a first-round playoff matchup with the Edmonton Oilers in a neutral site game. I think that we lose something for that, having that. Like, I know it's probably still going to be in an empty arena or whatever, but I think the fan interaction on this, I still think, is somewhat important. And having those games in those cities, I think, I don't know, am I missing something? I feel like that's important in this.
While it's still important, I don't think that it's actually going to, like, directly affect the actual. Yeah.
Kevin, you aren't missing something, but we're not going to get a perfect solution.
No,
out
of course not.
Yeah. Well, it's either like they play in empty arenas or they don't play at all.
Right. No, but I mean,
that's just what it comes up to. Like, you're not gonna. It's either we accept that we're gonna have to watch it with no fans, and like we've checked out actually some of the WWE stuff, and it does seem weird with them not having any fans there. But like, if we want it back, if we're missing hockey and we're missing sports that much, we have to make that sacrifice.
Well, this will be much like 10-15 beer league game. There's nobody watching those ones either, so it just be very high level and broadcast.
Before it got shut down in Australia, like the Aussie Rules football was playing in gigantic stadiums without fans.
Yeah.
It was weird, but it was something, and I enjoyed watching it when it was on.
Yeah, if we want to get some level of sport, there still is going to have to be a level of sacrifice where we're not going to be directly there with other fans watching it. We're not going to be, even with our friends, like, directly watching the thing together. Like, if we want sports, there's going to be a certain level of sacrifice to be paid.
Oh yeah, I don't dispute that. Sorry, there's an echo. I don't dispute that. It's going to feel weird, and it's like, especially with some all Canadian. Like, I mean, even Devin. I mean, as a Leaf fan, you would have to admit not having a game in Toronto is going to feel weird.
I mean, it's June. They're used to not having hockey games in June in Toronto.
Excuse me. I don't think you're allowed to talk right now.
I believe Devin has the floor.
Thank you, Tyler. And thank you, Kevin. I totally understand where Kevin's coming from. It's beside the fact that, we all want something. It's not going to be. It won't be the same. You're not. If for somehow Calgary plays Edmonton, it's not going to be the same. And no matter what, it's not going to be the same. But I totally understand where Kevin's coming from with this question, because it's like, it's so unfortunate with having such a long time between Battle of Alberta's in the playoffs, or even another, heaven forbid, Boston, Toronto in the first round again. It won't be the same, and it is unfortunate. It is shitty, and yes, we'll all be okay with it. However, that's going to come about, but it sucks.
Well, I guess that's the question. Does it get so hokey and so bizarre and so unusual that it's not worth doing at all? Or do we say it doesn't matter, however you get it on the ice, even if it's in a rink that holds 10 people, it's still hockey. I don't know where everybody's at with that. I think our group here feels like, let's get something on the TV because we're hungry to see some live sports. But I don't know how players feel about that.
I was listening to Dan Murphy interview Tyler Toffoli, and he seemed to be open to the idea. I think it all comes down to where things are at and the details. If we're on the downslope of everything in North America, and people start feeling a little comfortable, and maybe there is a vaccine, either close or just being released, then I think there's going to be less pushback. Yeah. But if it's being forced, like the WWE has been doing, the UFC has tried to do, I think you're going to see a lot more pushback, because you don't want these players, like we're seeing a lot more players in the NFL, more specifically than any other sport at this point, but retiring early because they don't want to affect their life after sport. So if you have this health issue, I could see it if the conditions aren't perfect, aren't right. They won't be perfect, but if they aren't leaning towards the better side.
Like for me, I'm more of like the better safe than sorry approach. So I would rather just not even try and actually force to have sports happen again, just for the sake of our own entertainment. And like to Sean's point about like a vaccine, even though we're already going at like record speed to get this thing developed, it's still likely close to a year out. So I just don't see it happening. And you can call me cynical if you want, but I just think it's the realistic approach.
No, I don't think that's cynical. I think that's, just the harsh reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I think the NHL has to think about, even in terms of restarting the regular season, you're looking at right now, like Toronto, Montreal, New York, LA, at this point in time, even November, December, I don't know how realistic it will be in Ottawa. I should add Ottawa in that because they are in Ontario. But so we've got 5 markets. But the reason I didn't necessarily put Ottawa as their small market, but 4 major markets anyway: Toronto, Montreal, New York, LA. 4 major markets that you are not. It's very tough to imagine them having fans in the stands even later on in 2020. I'm not sure. So in terms of even starting up the regular season, I think that there's a question of how to. I think that question has to be put into play here a little bit too, because if you're not getting fans, is it really worth it without 4 of your major markets not being able to put fans in the stands? And we mock the Leafs all we want, but the fact of the matter is they are an economic driver in the NHL. We can't dispute that. And I can see Devin is laughing at us right now, but that's the economic reality of the situation. How can the NHL really truly go forward with 4 cities not able to put fans in the stands?
And it's not even 4 cities, but you also have to include the Islanders,
yes,
the Devils, the Ducks, all these teams that are within relatively close or even part of the general metropolitan area of those cities. So it's not just 4 teams, you're talking like 7, 8 teams.
I'd
also the possibility of a second wave of this coming around too.
I'd even throw Vancouver in there, despite all these shiny numbers that BC is throwing out there, even though they're behind in testing and not testing enough. They're right beside Seattle, who is one of the hardest hit areas in North America. I do think that it's going to be interesting, but it's all about getting creative here and trying to figure out how to make something happen that's feasible and safe. If there's a way to make it feasible and safe, then do it. Mm-hmm. Don't say, well, no, we can't do it because we can't go forward because Toronto and New York can't host games. No, find a way. In my opinion. If there's a way to make it feasible and safe, don't worry about your major markets at this point, because you're gonna make more fans happy doing that, and you're gonna get more money in the door doing that than not doing it at all.
Maybe we
financially.
Go ahead, Devin.
If the owners, money's money, no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if it's not going to be in your building, there's the whole sharing program, the money sharing program. I forget what exactly it's called.
Revenue sharing.
But revenue sharing. Thank you. So no matter what, they're going to get their money, and I could definitely see the NHL kind of being like, okay, well, since we can't get butts in the seats, you'll have to pay like $1 or something like that to watch, and you're going to have millions of dollars in profit with people watching, guaranteed, or something like that. That just came to my head as an example. But no matter what, they will make it work. Whether or not certain markets can't do it because of COVID, but I don't see them not having a season because of that. That, to me, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess to me, the other part, like, I think there's the other PR part of it where you can go and jump ahead at the risk of doing something that is not necessarily safe for everybody, and that's why I'm thinking that. I want sport. I want hockey to be back as soon as possible. I'm open to the empty arena concept. I mean, I do think that these questions need to be asked where we are legitimately asked if this is how realistic it is, how logistically this goes. I mean, we haven't even. I have to admit, one of the questions I'm curious is about how unrestricted free agency works if we're back in July, because if it's July 15th, technically you're in UFA as of July 1st.
Yeah, it isn't. But at this point, instead of those are questions that you need to ask, and then you need to figure out how to answer them too.
Yeah.
I think with the season quote unquote paused, I think the NHL and the NHLPA are going to be willing, as again, work together and try and figure out maybe an extension for this season, so that say they're playing playoffs in July and August in some neutral site. Those players are still part of that team, and then the free agency doesn't start till September, October, and then we're looking at a November or December start for the next season.
I think as far as contracts expiring, that's a fairly easy one for them to solve.
Yeah.
But it's all about asking those questions is great, but if you're just basically poo-pooing any sort of creative thinking to try and make it happen, then why are you asking these questions anyways?
Right.
This is all about creative thinking, trying to figure out a solution. Again, but the key word is also safe. And one thing with you there, Kev, and the major markets is if there's no fans in the stands, why does it matter for them to play out of those markets? Then you move their games to another market that's safe, and they were going to get let's going back to the Dr. Fauci situation, they're going to be holed up in hotels anyways. So it doesn't really matter if they're the Rangers and playing out of New York, if they're the Rangers playing out of Hartford, or even go farther south away from it, right?
I see what
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
My biggest thing, sorry to interrupt, but my biggest thing is not necessarily that part. It's the travel.
Yeah.
And that's why I think having it centralized, or at least centralized in multiple spots, like say you have one series played, like 2 or 3 series played in Montana, 2 or 3 series played in North Dakota, 2 or 3 series played down in Utah. I don't know. But Idaho, yeah, like all these like sort of low populated areas. But if you do it that way, then again, there are still some issues, but you're mitigating the constant travel from place to place.
Mm-hmm. Well, now of course we have border restrictions in place right now between Canada and the U.S. Those would have to either come off, or there would have to be some sort of exemption to allow players to at least, just get to the one neutral site for the first couple of rounds or whatever. However it's going to be structured, there's still a lot of things there to get the people in the right places and make this happen.
Yep. Yeah, whether Justin and Trump would agree on the fact that like sports is the exception to the non-essential travel ban. Sort of thing.
And how do you sell that with the public? Like I think that's a tough sell for a political leader to say, well, sports is exempt from that.
Or even all the Europeans trying to get back to North America to be able to play.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that in Alberta with the golf courses too. There's definitely a large group. I won't say a large group, but a vocal group of people that are trying to get the Alberta government to allow them to open up golf courses, but they're not an essential service. And as much as I know Devin wants to go out golfing, as much as I would want to go out golfing, why?
Yeah, even our course up here, they're trying to find a way to be open at the end of this month, and I'm just like, wow, guys, like, bold. It's bold.
Like, granted, it's the most social distance sport there is, but at the same time, it's not an essential service. So how do you prioritize that over everything else in the society?
How do you police it is the question. Like, once you get like 2 holes away from the clubhouse and there's nobody, like, you're gonna have somebody running around enforcing social distancing on an 18-hole golf course that's like hundreds of acres. Like, I suppose that there's a way they could do that because they seem pretty serious about it, but I don't know. Like, again, it's a bit of a tough sell when you've got every other thing restricted right now,
let alone shared facilities, aka the washrooms. There's just too many there's too many questions. Is there a way to creatively think about it? Yes, but is now the time to do it? Now's the time to think about it and try and figure out, so that come, say, hopefully July or August, that things have maybe settled down enough that we can do it. You can implement it and go hit the ground running, but like trying to force your way in and have it open by the end of the month, like we're like your course up in Terrace is trying to do, and I'm sure lots of courses here in Alberta are trying to do. I don't think that that's the right time.
Yeah.
The only way that I think they'll be able to sell it is that not about the golf courses, but about opening up travel through, Europe and Canada and the U.S. is for, the mental state of everybody and how big sport is in general. That's the only way that they'll be able to somehow get the guys over the borders.
Yeah, it would have to be a groundswell of fan support, yeah.
And it's just the way this is hitting is so different, region to region, market to market. Like and every area is testing differently. Like I know Heidi and I have gotten into many different discussions on social media about this, because Alberta is basically testing everyone. Anyone who has the sniffles is getting tested. While BC has a very high, only if you're basically needing a respirator are you getting tested. And even then, I think I've heard times where they were put away. So numbers region to region are so drastically different because of their different testing like procedures and processes and regulations. So it's just knowing what numbers are good, what numbers are bad is tough for the layman to figure out.
And like if Sean's having like skeptical thoughts about like Vancouver, imagine like let's say like Raleigh in South Carolina or Dallas in Texas, like where some of these states aren't taking this very seriously at all, or have had such a small effect from the virus that they feel like they're not really as a threat. But at the same time, you can't just discount and be like, well, it's not going to hit us. So yeah, it's just a perspective from city to city and market to market is very different. So I don't know how you could like treat it consistently across the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a time here to be. I feel like we haven't heard from Heidi yet, but I hope I didn't jump in front. But I do think that there is an opportunity here for some innovation, and I think that is what I'm hoping comes out of this. Like, and I mean, I know that I ask these questions, and I'm like, well, I don't have a solution. But these are things I'm thinking about in sort of a negative way. But I really want to see some sort of innovation, and I really want to believe in some sort of collaboration to get sports, our society, everything kind of moving forward. Because I do think the longer that this goes on, I think it's going to get tougher mentally for people to deal with, and I think we're already seeing that now. I think we're already at a point 1 month, a little bit over a month into this, we're seeing mental effects happening already, in some cases. So trying to find a way to create some innovation and moving forward, I do think is important. And what I do like about Dr. Henry's approach has been, okay, we're going to move. We are planning ahead. And we're moving ahead, but we're not moving ahead in a rush, but we're going to take this slowly. And I do feel that. But I want to make sure Heidi's opinion gets chimed in here because she's sitting there not saying much.
So, well, every time that I went to say something, someone else started something else, or they went off somewhere, so then my point wasn't valid anymore. I don't even know we're back. I haven't talked in like 10 minutes, so... my general thought about the whole thing about restarting, neutral site, all that stuff, like, I think that in general, like, the neutral site idea is interesting, and I think it could work, but there has to be so much thought put into it. It cannot be done willy-nilly. Like, there just has to be so much planning done in it, because the little things that like maybe some people think about, like, I don't know, I imagined a scenario where they just like moved some teams to play up in, like, I'm gonna say like up where my parents live up in Wainwright, so up in like rural Alberta, and they just like play in a bunch of like the rural Alberta arenas. Like, they have no cases up there, like, but the strain on resources, like, you move a couple NHL teams up there, it's like you're gonna like clean out the local grocery stores, you're going to clean out the local Walmart, that stuff. Like, so all these things like just need to be thought about, but like I'm not completely against that idea. And I think any thought about like, oh, well, it's out of market. Well, who cares? Like, how many people do we have living in Calgary that are Vancouver fans? You guys are already out of market anyway. So we're all going to be inside watching the hockey games anyways. We're all out of market.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter where I think it is. I think it would be an interesting way to see, maybe even see, like, if it's a neutral site in, like, I don't know, as I said, like North Dakota or something. Like, sweet, I know nothing about North Dakota. I can learn about it.
Yeah, that's true. There's a travel education opportunity
like
here.
Yeah, like there's definitely like ways, as you said, Kevin, like that there's ways to get creative and to like just have to rethink it. Like, I'm seeing how the social media teams of the different hockey teams are thinking about how they keeping their jobs by putting content out and trying to keep the fans happy and to keep them engaged.
Teaching mascots how to dance on TikTok.
Teaching mascots how to dance on TikTok, and lots of that kind of stuff. I had a little bit of a chat with Tori Peterson this week about some of the stuff that she's been she's been working on, and she was on 960 the other day, sharing some of that same stuff with Pat Steinberg and the rest of the city. So I think it's all there. It's just it has to be done. It has to be done right. That's just at the end of the day, it has to be done right. And if it can be cool, but we can't jump into it without putting all this thought into it.
Mm-hmm. Like I'll just put a real world sort of comparison. In Calgary, the downtown co-op had 3 employees test positive, and then so some employee who meant well said that they were going to test the temperature of anyone entering that store, whether employee or like either staff or customer, and that started an interesting debate on how is it done and who's doing it and what are the details. And that's the thing that is I think gets lost in a lot of these conversations is, yes, it's a good idea, but what are the details?
Yeah.
And that's really what's going to come down to whether it becomes quote unquote safe or not. So I think part of what Dr. Fauci said was that they were going to test the players every week. Okay, so that's under the we're getting to that point now where the ability to test is widely available.
Here it is. Like in somewhere in depending where your neutral site is, they got to have the lab capacity.
Exactly.
To do that,
so there's another piece of another detail that needs to be taken care of. I'm sure they will, but it's all that's really all but the other thing is you need to be able to have those details ready to sell to the public, because there's going to be people who want sports back but are on the more practical side of things. We're saying, is this really worth it? Yeah, hi, Chris. Is it really worth it if we don't have all these things set up?
What happened to Chris?
Oh, he was waving.
Oh, okay.
I was just being sarcastic, like, yeah, that's me. Hi.
Yeah.
Mr. Practical.
Yeah.
It's okay to be practical.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see where we go from here. I do think lots to think about in terms of where we're at, and I think a good discussion, kind of where we're at, digging through this, and let's. I'm on the optimistic side. Let's hope this is sooner rather than later, for sure. But who knows? And maybe next week we can think of a scenario that could work. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. It is the 5-year anniversary of a moment that the Edmonton Oilers, one of the few times, sorry, I have to give them a little bit of a shot, one of the few times that they actually had an opportunity to cheer, and it was this.
And we have a winner. The first overall pick in the 2015 NHL draft belongs to the Edmonton Oilers.
That, of course, is the Connor McDavid draft, of course, where Connor McDavid was at the Hockey Night in Canada studios being interviewed. I still remember his face looking forlorn, that he wasn't the happiest. He didn't look like he was the happiest guy to be that the Oilers necessarily won that draft, but anyway.
I think we've learned that that's just his resting face.
That's probably it. Yes, yeah. That's his resting. Yes, true. Which, of course, the Oilers did do the right thing. I don't think anyone is going to disagree that they picking Connor McDavid first was the smarter thing to do. They did
paying him handsomely on top of that.
Yeah, paid him handsomely, yes. And, of course, they also hired Peter Chiarelli and Todd McClellan to be their coach and general manager. And, of course, they are no longer there, replaced by Ken Holland and Dave Tippett. We thought we would do a little bit of a redraft, kind of looking back on that 2015 draft, and kind of look and see who would basically be the top 5. And we could also, maybe if we want to, just quickly examine what happened with the Leafs, the Flames, and the Canucks. The Canucks picked first that year Brock Besser. The Flames traded Dougie Hamilton, of course, to the Boston
Traded
Bruins. Traded for Dougie Hamilton for their first-round pick for Dougie Hamilton, which ended up the Bruins having 3 first-round picks in a row, and the Flames picked their first pick that year was Rasmus Andersson. The Leafs picked 4th, because Devin keeps saying we don't talk enough about the Leafs. The Leafs picked 4th and picked Mitch Marner. So, if you had to do a top 5, I don't think, the 4 after Connor McDavid, I don't think anyone would dispute who would be number 1. It's obviously would be Connor McDavid. How would you have redrafted that 2015 draft? So,
number 2 has to be Eichel, right?
Yeah.
There's no debate on that. The 1 and 2 are right there.
Well, would there be or Leafs people out there saying Marner's better than Eichel?
No.
I don't know that. I don't know if there are or not, but that would be the only question there. I think no. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. McDavid 1, Eichel 2, and then it gets a little more debatable.
For me, it would be Marner's definitely 3. I would say he's better than Dylan Strome, for sure.
Go for it, Dad.
Well, I mean, you got to take a look at the entire draft. I'm going to give you my top 5 just off the bat here. So, obviously, McDavid, Eichel. Number 3 for me is Sebastian Aho. Number 4 is Shabbat. And number 5 is Rantanen.
So,
and then I have a bunch of runners up, Marner, Barzal, Werenski, and for goalie's sake, I just put in Samsonov there.
So for those who remember, Sebastian Aho was actually picked in the 2nd round, 35th overall. Shabbat was picked 18th. And then you had, who was your 4th again? Sorry.
Shabbat was 4th, and then Rantanen was 5th, and Rantanen was picked 10th overall.
10th overall. And your runner-ups are
Marner, Barzal, Werenski, and Samsonov.
From Washington.
Yeah.
Whew. So Aho 3rd. Okay. Can you explain that?
I believe he was on track for, or he got 40 last year, or he was on track for 40 this year. I forget. To me, he's a game changer. He's outright one of. Well, he's the best Carolina Hurricane for sure, and he should have been picked in the 1st round easily. I don't know. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but that's what I'm looking at. And then Shabbat at number 4. I mean, he's playing 25 plus minutes a night right now, and he's a beast. He's a monster on the point. And that's maybe a couple forwards might be able to go in front of him, but I mean what he's going to be for Ottawa going forward just makes sense for me to go 4. And then Rantanen is just a complete beast up front. Some people might say that he is a benefactor of McKinnon and Landeskog, but I just think that his size, his speed, his shot just makes him that much better than my runners up of Marner, Barzal, and Werenski. So
yeah.
Just for this,
I think it's really tight between for 3 through I think 6. I'd have you could pick any of Marner, Aho, Rantanen, or
the name I'm going to throw in there, Kyle Connor.
Connor's been underrated, but I have him a step below. I'd throw Barzal into that top 3 through 7 range at that point as well. I think he's a game changer with his speed and his skating ability. But Devin said it right. Shabbat, the guys, you don't get many chances to get a number 1 defenseman, and Ottawa got a replacement for Erik Karlsson in Thomas Shabbat. And then I'll take this to jump into my hot take, saying that the Flames screwed up in trading for Dougie Hamilton in that draft, because the pick that was used to take that was the Flames pick was ahead of where Thomas Chabot was taken. Could you imagine that the Flames blue line with Chabot and Anderson as your anchors going forwards, with Giordano still there? I really do think that they missed the boat in. No one knew how that Chabot was going to be this good. I don't think, but you look at that and you're like, I really do think that they missed the boat on that. In my opinion.
Well, that in that little list there, who could have been picked if the Flames picked was Jake DeBrusk, Zachary Senyshyn, Matthew Barzal, Kyle Connor, and Thomas Chabot. I would argue at least 4 of those would have been a help for the Flames right now. I think Jake DeBrusk would have been a huge help in Calgary. I think Matthew Barzal would have created I think Matthew Barzal could create an easier opportunity to trade a guy like Monahan if you wanted to. Kyle Connor is a goal scorer, and you're certainly, with Thomas Chabot, at the very least, you're reducing Giordano's ice time. So I do agree with you that wasn't. I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think that was a good trade. I don't think that does not go down in my mind as one of Treleaven's best moves. I don't know if Heidi and Devin agree with me on that, but
in hindsight, it maybe not. I think at the time. And we gotta remember, like, when we think about these things in the future, like, you don't. I'm starting to, like, more and more believe, as, like, I am becoming more and more of a fan of hockey, that drafts are just crapshoots anyways. And basically everybody outside of maybe the first 2 or 3 picks, like, it could be anything. So I don't know.
Drafts are crapshoots, but you can make it less of a crapshoot by doing better research. But you're still trying to guess the future at the end of the day.
What I will say though is the trade when they trading Dougie Hamilton to Carolina and getting Elias Lindholm and Noah Hannafin, I think makes up for that.
Yeah, and I was about to say that too. Yeah, that part, like when Dougie did play well for a year or so, and but then like when we had to get rid of him just because of things going on outside of the ice, I think, at the end of the day. So but yeah, like the return that we ended up getting for him when we traded him away ended up being okay. So I'm not gonna sit here and say that it was wrong and everything, because people were okay with it when it happened. It's just like when we were going through the whole stage of like Dougie Hamilton wasn't like getting along with his teammates and stuff anymore. That's when the anger came out about it.
Well, looking back on Dougie Hamilton when he first came to the league, he was a stud. He was a very highly touted prospect, and at the time I remember being overjoyed with getting Dougie Hamilton. I thought it was a great trade. I can't exactly remember. I know it was a first and
2 seconds, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I thought that was good enough to get Dougie Hamilton, who is a very, very solid top 2 defenseman in the league, whether or not he's going to museums or whatever. I know that when he got traded from Boston, the Boston media, kind of kicked his ass on the way out, telling him that he wasn't a team player. He didn't fit in the room right. And, that's totally fine. Like, and Calgary kind of had the same thing, not so much with the media kicking him out on the way out, but just not having that group mesh within the locker room.
Oh, the media kicked him on his way out.
That seems like quite a Boston thing. Hey, Joe Thornton was kicked on the way out. Phil Kessel was kicked on the way out.
Tyler
Seguin. Discount that a a little bit. Yeah.
Basically, if you don't fit in, you get kicked on the way out if you're in Boston.
Seems that way.
But Dougie did get kicked on the way out of Calgary too.
Yeah.
But it almost turned
out. Here's a real player like he is. Like I can see how that happens, especially in more of like a pragmatic sort of like blue collar town.
Yeah, in a traditional sort of hockey, quote unquote hockey boys locker room and environment, he's not someone who's going to fit in, which is why I think he's fit. He's found a home in Carolina, for sure.
Yeah, and I think kind of the new wave has helped Dougie Hamilton. And kind of the storm surge and all of these gimmicky things that the old school hockey people don't like, I think has allowed Dougie Hamilton to fit in a lot better and actually just play his game. Which, going back quickly to, I think that's the other, just quickly going back to the empty arena concept. One of the things that also I think would be really fascinating is because there's so many players with so much pressure on them, with the fans on, like as an example, like Johnny Gaudreau or even an old school Jake Gardiner or Austin Matthews, or some of these players that the fans get really on when they aren't playing well. Being in an empty hockey arena, I wonder if that's almost would be a benefit for them.
But then there'd be other players who, like a Matthew Tkachuk or an Elias Pettersson, or players who feed off the emotion of and the energy of the crowd.
Yeah, there's definitely two sides to that coin.
Yeah, but that train of thought went in my head. But yeah, definitely think for Dougie Hamilton, the way that turned out for him in Carolina, I think turned out to be the best for him. But I mean, it really did not, like, I agree with both sides. I agree with what Sean is saying, that wasn't a great result, but it did make up to getting Lindholm and Hanifin, which was a top 5 pick in that 2015 draft. Mm-hmm. Tyler, Chris, how are you going to...
Yeah, I think I'd still have Mitch Marner in that top 5, honestly. I benefit of hindsight, I'd go 3 Barzal, 4 Marner, 5 Rantanen, and then maybe Aho after that. That'd be kind of my sort of redraft of it there. But I don't want to take much away from Mitch Marner. I mean, he's a hell of a player.
I think if you look at, like, you can quibble at this point with both Canucks pick, the Canucks pick in Besser, and the Leafs pick in Marner, but they both got, like, studs. And the Canucks did an amazing job getting Besser in the 20s.
Well, I think they got players that are very comfortable with the spotlight of the markets they're playing in as well, which is important.
Like, the Canucks got Besser at 23, and the only other player that you would think you would pick over him is Aho, but he was a second-round pick, like, pick 12 picks after him, right? Mm-hmm. So that's and then the same thing with the Leafs and Marner. Like, you can quibble about it. Yeah, they could have picked Rantanen, they could have picked Werenski or Noah Hanifin.
Yeah,
because he went 5th in that draft. But, like, they've got a fantastic player who is a game changer in his own right. So I think really the biggest loser in this draft is the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah,
at least in the top 10. Like, they could pick Pavel Zacha, and he's not necessarily an impact player, while the rest of them are. Like, Ivan Provorov, impact puck-moving defenseman. Timo Meier, impact power forward, new age power forward for the Sharks. And then it falls off a little bit, thanks to mostly Boston. But then you hit this, like, 3 of all, like, amazing players in Barzal, Connor, and Shabbat, 16, 17, 18. Like.
Yeah.
Well, just for me to jump in as far as, like, being the last person to be able to, like, pick my top 5. For me, like, I'm more so looking at, like, the underrated guys that maybe not have gotten the recognition that they did. And obviously, Devin already brought up Aho. But for me, like, the 2 that kind of get forgotten in this draft is Kyle Connor and Travis Konecny. Like, as far as offensive production in the NHL, they're 7 and 8 out of that entire draft list. So
Totally.
I think that they deserve maybe a little bit more recognition than what they got, but at the same time, would I have put them in my top 5? I'm not sure. Like as far as like NHL production, it goes McDavid, Eichel, Marner, Aho, Ratinen, then followed by Barzal, Connor, and Konecny, and Werenski and Besser to round out the top 10. So,
And Konecny was 24 right after Besser. I agree with you there, Chris. I like Konecny because I kind of did a bit of a tiered system of who was picked after Besser, Anderson, Rasmus Anderson, and Shillington as well. Just going deeper in the draft. Behind Besser, I have Konecny, Aho, Chernak, who's a solid defenseman in Tampa Bay, and Rupe Hintz possibly as well. For if Vancouver's going to pick anybody else in that draft, those were the 4 that I got.
I actually didn't pick mine, and I'm going to hot take this. I'm going to have the hot take picks because I would not have Jack Eichel second. Actually, I would go.
Whoa.
I would.
Wow.
That is a hot take because he's
That is a very
50
spicy take.
points ahead of
Please,
Marner for third in points.
hold on. What does Heidi think? She's the hot take person on the podcast.
What do I think about Kevin's hot take there?
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear who he thinks is better than Jack Eichel first, and then I'll...
Okay, so my list would be McDavid, Marner, Barzal.
Well, you got the look from Devin.
McDavid, Marner, Barzal, Eichel, and then I'm torn between Werenski and Rantanen.
Oh, man.
No,
So you're
Kevin,
drawing
you're
like
wrong.
2
No.
spots.
Listen, hang on. Hear
You have
me
any
out.
listeners in Buffalo?
I understand that. Whatever. Yes. Well, you can throw some eggs at me. Whatever. Hear me out. Because Jack Eichel did not get off to an awesome start. Jack Eichel has developed now into a guy that we would probably put in the top 2. But I don't know if I would have put him right. I don't know if I would have him. I would take him ahead of Marner. In terms of if I'm starting a franchise, I tend to think that Mitch Marner may be able to create a little bit more value outside of that dressing room than Jack Eichel did. We have not talked about he is not necessarily warmed up to Buffalo, and he has not necessarily been known to be the greatest out of the locker room. I'm not going to dispute that the guy has talent, but I don't know if I can win with Jack Eichel.
To be devil's advocate, though, what was his minor career like, though? Because I feel like Eichel had a bigger minor career, whereas Marner was more so quiet in the minors.
My argument, Kevin, is that there's something rotten in Buffalo.
Well, there probably is. There's something rotten in that water too.
Who won the Conn Smythe last year?
Ryan O'Reilly.
What did he say about Buffalo?
I have to look that up. It wasn't.
He said he was not having fun and he wanted out of Buffalo.
And I remember a very similar line from Ryan Miller when he wanted out.
And who was Ryan O'Reilly traded for? Patrick Berglund, who was a decent third line center on that St. Louis Blues team. He goes to Buffalo and wants out, and he walked away from multi millions of dollars to go play SHL in Sweden because he was fed up with Buffalo. There's something rotten in that organization right now, and it sucks for some of the best fans in the league and Buffalo Sabres fans, but there is something wrong there.
And it makes you have sympathy for a guy like Skinner right now.
Yeah, so I can't put that on Eichel, and he's separated himself out. He is legit the second best player coming out of that draft. You would get way more for him in a trade than you would for Mitch Marner, and that's saying a lot because Mitch Marner is good. And Matthew Barzal is a very good player as well, but Eichel is a step above both of them.
Okay, we can disagree. That's fine.
All right, Devin, you're the Toronto guy, and you had Eichel second right away. Why would you hold him above Eichel? Eichel Marner.
Just to preface this, I had Marner outside the top 10 or top 5. Sorry, not top 10, top 5. And I love Marner. I love what he does, but I mean, Eichel has that drive. On ice, he has that unique Raptor skating style that everybody talks about. And like, he's just, if McDavid wasn't a part of that draft, he would be number one easily. Mm-hmm. In my mind, easily. I mean, I see where Kevin's coming from in the sense that, he might not be the best outside the locker room, but I mean, like, he's 18 years old. I remember when he got drafted, and then there's that video that came out of him getting drunk, or maybe it was before the draft. I forget. There was a video that came out of him drinking and stuff like that. But I mean, like, what I believe that, at the end of his career, he will be better than Marner easily. Marner, he's a great player. I watch him play every single game. He wants to win, but there's something about a big first-line center, number one center in this league, that makes a big difference over a winger too.
Okay, that's fair.
And if you want to talk about baggage, then you've got Marner's dad and his agent, who are a bit of baggage there.
I think that's overblown by the Toronto media.
Yeah, I've kind of always wondered if there was a little bit of an overblow there with him too, but I've been a little higher on Marner. Werenski and Chabot are definitely the two best defensemen that come out of that draft. That's my opinion on that. Yeah, and of course there's, another underrated guy. I don't know if I wouldn't have him in top 5, and I don't know if I'd have him in top 10, but Timo Meier, I don't know where you put him there. But at number 9, he may, at one hand you can make an argument that was too high, but on the other hand, that he has scored some pretty big goals for San Jose.
He's 11th in total points out of that draft. Yeah. I see no issues with him at 9. Big, physical, new age power forward who can score. Like, we're gonna, like, if you're gonna compare him to other sort of players, like, it's just you look at, say, like Justin Williams. Like, he's not necessarily the most prolific scorer, but he knows how to play well, and he knows where to be to score.
Yeah, more of a plus guy. Yeah,
there was a Thomas Dranson, an interesting article about the Canucks last draft by Vasily Podkolzin. He's not going to wow you with his point totals, but his overall game is just that good, and I think that's where Timo Meier is as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had actually continued on the list that I was talking about earlier, like, he actually was where I stopped. Timo Meier was the next player down.
Like, for me, I would say that there's like a top 13, and then there's a big drop off.
Yeah. I agree.
You throw it, like, you got McDavid, Eichel, 1, 2, Marner, Aho, Rantanen, Barzal, and then Chabot and Werenski. I think you can put them in any order, and you're not necessarily wrong. And then you've got Connor, Konechny, Besser, and Timo Meier, as well as Ivan Provorov. And then I think you can even make an argument for Noah Hannafin. Like, just for point totals alone. Like, he's got more points than Provorov and Chabot.
That's a product that is getting ignored out of all of us. Jake DeBrusk, who's kind of that middle of the pack in that 30.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of Jake DeBrusk.
I like DeBrusk, but I just don't think he's got the top end talent that the rest of those players that we've listed.
No,
Fair.
he doesn't.
Yeah.
But he's a role player, and I imagine DeBrusk on second line with Kachuk.
Yeah.
In Calgary, that'd be a hell of a line.
Like if I had to do a top 15, DeBrusk would be in that top 15 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Flames, that Flames draft, I mean, we criticized the Dougie Hamilton trade, but that still turned out to be a really good draft for the Flames. That was Rasmus Anderson, Oliver Shillington, and Andrew Mangiapane was part of that draft. So you still give Tree Living credit for a really good draft that year. So,
Yeah, all key parts of their current team.
Yeah.
There you go, Heidi. Your boy, Andrew Mangiapane.
Talk about that bread.
Yeah, go get that bread.
Next week, I think what we should do
You
is
look so annoyed right now.
next week. I think we should look at the Austin Matthews draft the year before.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Yes.
'Cause
But
that-
I do want to just a little side note. Later on in that draft, you have Anderson at 53,
yeah,
Vince Dunn at 56.
That-
Then you have Shillington. Yeah, Vince Dunn. He's going to be a good power play specialist for St. Louis if Pietrangelo stays.
Oh, he's gone.
Then you have Shillington at 60, Matthew Joseph, who's a good fourth liner in Tampa Bay, Connor Garland, who is putting up goals like it's no other in Arizona, Ethan Bear, who's going to be a good solid defenseman for Edmonton, and then no one's talked about him yet, and I'm so surprised, Adam Gaudette.
I was about to say, I was going through it too, and Adam Gaudette at 149th overall.
that's yeah. I was looking at that. Yeah.
Him and Mangiapane both have 45 total points in their career. Travis Dermott too, there, Dev.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Travis Dermott.
I
He's
didn't
at
want to see
34th overall.
I don't want to seem too Toronto heavy.
But the problem with that pick, Dev, is immediately after 35th overall, the Carolina Hurricanes take Sebastian Aho.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, it's the same thing with the Canucks and the Jared McCann pick. Like, he's turned out to be a decent player, but the immediate pick after that was freaking David Pasternak.
Wasn't it also the same thing with the Grabner draft as well? Like, I want to say the guy that was right after him was like also like a top-notch dude, even though he himself was a good draft pick. I can't remember
It's
who it
crazy how
was.
there's a bunch of those.
There's once you get into like these draft second guessing drafts, it's
Interactive.
Vortex. It really is a vortex.
like, I'm trying to go, what year was that?
He was
2006?
Something around there.
Yeah, it was 10. Well, he started 14th overall into 2006, and that draft, Brian Little was ahead of him. There was Riku High. Actually,
No,
wasn't.
you're wrong there, Chris.
It actually was not.
Maybe memory is thrown off, but for me, McCann and Grabner are both like decent picks that both escaped us.
The
As far as like
issue
their
is that,
offensive production.
yeah, the Canucks picked Grabner at 14. At 22,
Was
the
Claude
Philadelphia Flyers picked Claude Giroux.
So maybe it wasn't right after him, but
Yeah.
there was a couple picks later where there was like a top-notch guy. Yeah.
All right, but
Yeah.
before we get fully into the draft wormhole that you can get into, let's move on.
Yeah.
Well, I will mention that we're already an hour 40 into this podcast.
Yeah, we'll save some of this for next week. Hey, Kev?
An hour 12. Yes, we will save another. But I do. It is the and I actually want to spend some time reviewing this in future podcasts. But the Last Dance documentary is coming out this week. It is Michael Jordan's last year of the NBA, and I was wondering if there was an NHL player that you would want to hear what the last year would have been like for them. Who would that have been?
Who would that have been, or who going forwards?
Well, either or.
Because going forwards, it's Ovi.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
Would you try to do a documentary of like when he gets, how many is he behind now? Gretzky?
because that's part of why you would do it.
Yeah,
is like it would be a potential chase, and even then he's still Ovi, where it'd be very entertaining.
Yeah, that would be he would be one. A future one I would be Crosby. I would be fascinated by just what his final year, wherever that is, looks like.
It'd be boring.
Well, probably. It probably would be. A lot of people suggested Gretzky, but I also think that would have been boring. Actually, you know what would have been? Here's my documentary that I would love to have seen, is Mario Lemieux during that Hodgkin's battle.
Yeah,
that's a solid one.
No arguments there.
Yeah, that would have been so...
If we're going there, but how about Yager?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking
my
Yager
pick.
too. Yeah.
Yager deserves a biopic, for sure.
Yeah. That would be 4 seasons of 1 year, too.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't mind a Joe Thornton final year. I think that could be quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like for the future, like, I wouldn't mind seeing some, like, I'm going to just, like, mention a couple names here, but players like Gio and, like, Derek Ryan, these guys that, like, came up through the ranks, like, unconventionally, like, either didn't get drafted or did get drafted, but, like, played, like, went to Europe and maybe played, like, university and stuff like that, kind of see more of that kind of, those kind of guys come through, not just these guys that were, picked at the top and kind of ended up in the NHL right away.
A Canucks version of that would be like a Yannick Hansen, if you will.
Alex Burrows.
Or Burrows, yeah.
Burrows, yeah.
If you're gonna go that off range, if there's anyone on the Canucks, it's Burrows.
But I wouldn't say Yannick's too far behind Burrows in that regard.
No, but Yannick was at least picked in the draft.
Sure.
Burrows was not picked, then went to ECHL, and then was playing freaking roller hockey.
Yeah. Maybe I was more so thinking, like, in a comparison to, like, a Datsuk as opposed to, like, a Burrows.
Datsuk would be interesting, too. Just on this topic, if you get a chance, on the Sportsnet YouTube channel, they did a documentary on Alex McGillney's defection from.
I watched that last night, actually.
From Russia to the Sabres, and it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've said I want them to do a Peter Nedved one.
Oh yeah, that would be
someone who has a signed stick from Peter Nedved. I fully endorse that
because he defected after the Max Midget tournament here in Calgary.
Yes, he did. I remember that. I also.
Dev?
Oh, sorry, Kev. I'd love to see with the stories with how you spitting chicklets is bringing out stories within the hockey community. I'd love to see Keith Tkachuk, and I would love to see Brett Hall as well. I think those would be fantastic kind of stories. And going back, Kev, you asked how many goals Ovechkin is behind Gretzky. Is 188.
So
2 seasons.
Decent amount, but I think Ovi might be able to eke that out if he really tries.
But yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stories and just personalities that you would want. Like what I want to see, because I think they've actually gotten. They have rights. They're in the process of doing a screenplay for this. Is the John Scott story?
Yeah, they've been talking about that for actually a few years off and on too.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The other one that I would love to is the Russian Red Army defection. So the Larionovs, the Marat Makarovs, the Fedosov, all of that, and how they ended up in the NHL.
And to connect back to Sean's point, like McGillney is also a part of that too.
Yeah.
Well, McGillney was the biggest fish to defect at that time, because all those guys that you listed off there, Kevin, were older.
Yeah.
They were older. They thought they were kind of over the hill, while McGillney was this 19, 20-year-old kid who wanted to come over. And
Sean, who was it? Who were they interviewing? Was it Sergei Fedorov?
Yeah.
Yeah. And even him, like, he was older than McGillney at that time. And just the answers that they got out of Fedorov in that interview, I thought were pretty funny.
Oh, yes, he was. You could tell he was still a little. The way McGillney did it didn't sit well with him and the.
Yeah, he was still a little salty about it. Yeah.
Yeah. There is when you guys were talking about the Red Army. I know I watched this probably 2-ish years ago already, but and I don't know if it's on Netflix anymore, but there is a Red Army documentary. I think it came out. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia. I think it came out in 2014. It's really good if you want to.
I'll have to check that out.
Check it out. It might still be on Netflix. That's where I had watched it, but it was quite a while ago.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a bunch. Even the Sedins last year, I think, would be just a fascinating watch of that decision. And I mean, who decided first, Henrik or Daniel, or
They decided at the same time, Kevin. You know that.
I know, but
it might have been 12 hours apart, but it was the same day.
It was the same day. All right. We will leave it there. We will be back next week. Sorry again for those that were watching on Facebook Live. There was a white screen, so I could see why nobody was watching. So I just ended the Facebook Live and kept it on Spreaker. So if you listened, thank you. We'll repost this again. But how do we follow everyone?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter
and on TikTok.
Oh, you're on. Oh, yeah. So now we have to add TikTok.
You've been waiting the whole show for that.
Yeah, I was like, if he doesn't say TikTok, if he doesn't say it, I'm going to say it.
Okay, and how do we follow Heidi on TikTok?
You can follow me at Heidi Maceballs on everywhere, including TikTok.
I am at Schneids on most social media, but if we're including TikTok, I am at Schneids10 on TikTok.
Okay.
I'm on Twitter at TNoble, and I am resisting TikTok for now. I'm being the grumpy old guy with this.
And I'll be the grumpy new guy with this, and I'm saying I'm not going to be on TikTok at all. But on Twitter, you can follow me at GordHowe09.
And where do we follow Gord?
Oh, yeah. My Great Dane Gord. You can follow her on Instagram at gord.the.great.
So, Devin, in a couple of weeks, can we do a retrospective on Gordie Howe? Would you be open to doing that?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
I think that would be a really good educational piece because he's in the Mount Rushmore of hockey, and I think that there's some historical things that people don't know. So I want.
Okay, before we sign off and all that, Kev, this was going around. This was making the rounds on Twitter. The Mount Rushmore of hockey is Gretzky or Lemieux and Howe, right? There's no other answer.
Sean, you just open up a box of shit.
That's
The easy answer is yes.
Yeah, the answer is.
If your answer is no, we'll talk about it next week.
He's thinking about it too long. We're going to talk about it next week.
All right, Kev. Thank you.
Okay,
Kevin, how can we follow you?
KEVOLE. I do have a TikTok account. I have not posted anything on it there. So we'll leave
Kevin
it there.
on TikTok would be something.
I fully anticipate Kev's first TikTok.
All right.
And
Kevin, if you get on TikTok, I may go on TikTok if you do it first.
All right.
Maybe we if people really want to, maybe we can somehow figure out how to have a hockey podcast TikTok account. I don't know how, but
there is a way. All right. We'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone. We will talk to you soon. Bye for now.